This is the third show and tell we've done in the 6 years we've been around. The last one was a year ago. I was in Oakhurst and we ran the show and tell from there, including some of the Oakhurst examples. But everything we do is recorded, unless it's not, but 99% of it is. And they're recorded on our YouTube channel. And in the case of last April, the slides for that show are also there, and the expectation the same as here. We also did one 5 years ago, and it's just really a lot of fun to see what those are about. I'll speak for a few minutes, and then Scott, I just noticed you logged in. Thank you. And so you'll follow me, and then right after that will be Jerry, and then I'll call out the subsequent speaker as we get through this. I really want to plug what used to be called the Silverton Rendezvous, Oregon Rendezvous. It has always been held at Canyon View Camp in Silverton. It's not this year. It's going to be at Center 50 Plus, which is really a first-class retirement center. It has nothing to do with retirement, but it's a great facility, conveniently located. And it's the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the dates, September 18th to the 20th. And there'll be quite a bit of information about that, obviously, as we get going. It's a great place to learn. The Northwest Carving Academy in Ellensburg is another fantastic place, a week in July, and that's been in the newsletter. But this one is more local and commutable. It's basically an hour drive from those of us in the Portland area. We do these show and tells because they're inspirational for new and old. We get ideas. We get ideas for designs. We get ideas for variations of things that are there. Also a chance to make connections with names and faces. So you hopefully will connect with an idea or a person, and feel free to contact those people that have pictures in there. If you can't find them on the membership directory on the website, send me an email or text, and I'll connect you. And then ultimately, everything we do is about education. You learn something about materials, some techniques, and some tools tonight. And this is why we do this. The California Carvers Guild is instrumental in my own understanding of carving. CCG at one point had about 50 clubs around California. They have dwindled, but they still got active ones. And Scott Lang, who is one of our speakers, is the leader in the Morro Bay, Central Coast, California club. And Roman Chernikoff, who is here from San Jose, also a speaker, is the leader of that chapter. His chapter is number one when that group was formed. They use the term broken blade, and broken blades is the term for someone who has died. And I hadn't heard that up here before, maybe a common term in the carving world, I don't know. But Bob Chiaverini passed away a couple months ago. And Bob was part of the Jim Hall group of 6 that met weekly and did really challenging projects. And Joe Jadrowski, who some of us know and hang out with, was part of that. Of the 6 that were there, 3 of them have now passed away. And Bob was really a remarkable bird carver and a creative kind of a guy. We got started with the Comfort Birds project. He said, "Oh, that's boring. I'm not going to carve a comfort bird." So he created a tadpole. And he created, I think, 5 of them. This is the last remaining one. And it's in the club's collection. And whoever inherits my seat will inherit that collection. And I just put that there because in some sense, people get scared. The little kids say, "Wow, what an ugly monster that is." But it's Bob, and it's really him. This is what Bob looked like. His house was a museum. You got kind of fuzzy pictures of bird carvings that he did in the past. And this is the same carving with 2 different lighting situations. You can see the owl in the left-hand side, but you change the lighting situation and you get really a pretty dramatic view of how that worked. Bob will be missed. I want to put a plug in for Terry Kramer's class. We did a pilot project with 3 of us last week. Terry taught 25 of these classes based on his book called From Clay to Wood. He would typically teach them at Sitka on the coast, and it's about modeling in clay how to make a face and then carving what you model. And this book was written in 1995. It's transformational. In the first opening sequence, you get 40 minutes to make a face. And these were the three faces. I won't tell you which one's mine. But you have a view of what a face looks like, and you realize there's, as Terry teaches, it's a stylized version of what you think a face looks like. You don't have enough time to do very much. At the end of the second day, this is what we modeled. The one the first left and right, left and middle are full size. The one on the right is not quite full size. What looks like a halo on the back of the face is actually a mounting board on which the clay is mounted. We're doing everything in front of the ears, and a lot of individual work, a lot of focus on eyes. Some of us got it, some of us didn't. But the pilot basically convinced Terry that he knew how to do this again. He hasn't done it for 10 years. He's 88 years old. He's carved for over 60 years. And he was a featured speaker last September on the face carvings and 1,000 face carvings he did in cottonwood bark. It's really quite remarkable. There's an interest list now on the website. You can find it under the calendar. We'll be hopefully producing some classes, probably 5 at a time, 5 people at a time. They'll be in the Salem area somewhere. And the price is right. There's 3 shows I'm gonna cover tonight. This is the Salem show. I'm gonna show highlights here that didn't necessarily show up in the newsletter that Tom put out last month. This is a picture of the room at Center 50 Plus, the contemporary facility, lines and tables after table after table. It was really a good show. And this represents about 2/3 maybe of the volume. The wall on the far right was the extent of it, and it just filled the room. There was no room for any more tables. Tim Flora, who is pictured here, is a relief carver. And he's got remarkable talents. This is a 2-for picture. Lori Ladd is a member of our club also, and she is a fixture in the Salem Club. And she has a wide variety of stuff that she showed. I showed this particular example by Donna Sciorgino. She does a lot of wood burning, but she carves these little ladybugs and gives them away. So the carving is one piece, but the little pipe cleaners. And so you see on the table at the very bottom, she has those. So when kids come by, she would give them a ladybug. And it just strikes me as a really nice example of an attractive project that's simple to carve. Jerry Boone, who is here, does little owls that he gives away at some of our shows. I showed Dennis and Donna both because they're fixtures in the club, but also fixtures in the Oregon Rendezvous. Both of them end up teaching. Donna is, I think, the lead teacher in pyrography and does a lot of wood burning stuff. And Dennis does various projects. He did a hummingbird project at the last Oregon Rendezvous, and he was the featured carver at the show 12 months before. I'm blown away by gourd art. I think this was the only serious gourd carver they had at this particular show. But when I get down at the end to the Mesa, Arizona show, they partnered with the Gourd Society and created a lot of interesting dynamics. And the Idaho show, which is happening the same time as Gathering the Guilds, they also partner with the Gourd Society in Idaho. And the creativity that comes out of that, they carve them, they wood burn them, they paint them, they use mixed materials. It's quite remarkable. Rob Artman, who some of you know, with carving for 15 years, gave up carving native and Northwest coastal stuff and sold his tools and is taking up gourd carving. I don't know how far he's come in a year, but it was an interesting transition. Rick is the interesting thing about this picture is the lower left side using a battery operated Ryobi soldering station as a wood burning system that he can take to shows and do wood burning. He had, I think, three tips that fit into this into the tool, and he could do his thing. What's interesting about Rick is that he was also a calligrapher and a member of the Calligraphers Society. So his signatures and artwork represents a degree of artistry that I think is pretty remarkable. If you're ever motivated about Christmas carvings, that club does an annual massive fundraiser and Christmas ornament generation project, and they sell them and they give them away. And they had two tables full of them. This was just one of them. This is the back end of a saber-toothed tiger. You can see the tooth kind of on the right-hand side. This was carved by Terry Kramer from a cast from the Labrie tar pits in Los Angeles. And the cast was made from a real skull. And so he had access, if you will, to an accurate replica carved in two parts. The lower jaw was separate from the upper jaw, and he carved that. He's also carved a human skull and then made casts of those for use in some of his classes. But Terry, besides doing faces, is just really remarkable. I point this particular walking stick slide out because of the balls at the end. Jim Blotner is one of the most productive walking stick carvers that I've met. And in a talk, he's done talks in Salem, but the handles that he likes the most are these round balls, as opposed to other types of handles that are more difficult for people that have disability, need these canes to be able to grasp them. And he's not turning them; he's just buying the balls and drilling them, but he makes them very functional. And they're very pretty walking sticks. Some diamond willow, but a lot of them, as you notice, are woven with leather grips on the top. There's a lot of other slides that Tom put in the newsletter, and that's really the end of the Salem recap that I have. We had a table there that was a great show. I'm glad we went. I hope we can go again. Scott, I'm going to call on you. Can you unmute your microphone, Scott, and acknowledge that you're there because I can't see you on the screen?
I'm here.
Okay. So Scott has presented twice now for us, and he did a program 2 years ago on making a long-bladed knife for use in complicated whittling project, one of which was the bird in the cage, which was the second one. And Scott's only 29 years old. He's only been carving for 40 years. But you can introduce yourself just a bit, Scott. But I belong to his club in Morro Bay, and it's just a great honor to do that. So I asked Scott if he'd share a few slides, and so this is your first one I picked, Scott. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Well, I love chain carving. It's what got me started in carving when I was 11, and now I'm 67 going on 68. So I've spent a little bit of time, for 100 or so tries to get the links to fall apart were very frustrating, but now 50 or so years later, it's a breeze, and you learn little tricks and things along the way. This carving, I don't know if you can see in the bell, it's got the clapper of the bell also is moving. And I made a special tool for that out of a dental pick to reach up in there and carve away. And this piece is made out of pine, not basswood. So it's it was I actually find the pine to be a little more forgiving than basswood when carving chains. Um, this is, I believe it's white pine, or it's a clear pine, obviously, and it was wonderful. A little 2x2 stick, and the links on this one, you can see are, I was kind of going for round, but you know, serendipitous accidents happen when you're trying to carve round. Round entails three, I don't know what you call three elements to the link versus just a round oval. And that's an interesting carve because instead of doing a cross for your links, you do a hexagon. So the links can alternate. So that was fun. And then of course carving the spiral cage with the two balls in the middle. I find spiral cages or round cages are actually easier to do than square cage, believe it or not. And so that's that one.
You
Anybody?
did this when you were 11 years old?
No, I did that one probably about 5 years ago.
Okay, so you're pretty
Um,
experienced.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and there
I put the other two pictures on this one slide for you to talk to.
there you go. So I'll talk about the duck first. Um, I got into uh, competitive wildfowl carving when I was in my 20s, late 20s, and used to go up to the Sacramento show. That's the Pacific Wildfowl Decoy Carvers Association, I believe. And then at the time, there was also a Southern group, the Southern California Decoy Carvers, that met in San Diego, and I would carve things and enter in the shows. I was novice to intermediate, but I've got a lot of friends who are world class duck carvers. And in fact, my friend Terry, he won first, second, and third best of show in one category at the Ward World Championships this year. And I I'm happy to count him as one of my mentors in wildfowl carving. And this is a little uh, Drake ruddy duck pattern that we did actually for a class um, in our chapter. And it was just sort of trying to introduce people into duck carving and, you know, wildfowl carving, just a taste, not the full on takes a year to complete type of carving. This is just what they would call a smoothie, and this one is actually just a third size rather than a full sized duck. So and we had a lot of fun in the class. Of course, we had a lot of different results, and I think it gave people an idea of what it takes to be a wildfowl carver. And so that was interesting.
How long was that
Now,
class? How long was the class?
well, we did it over a month's time, and it was, well, no, I take it back. This class was in Paso Robles, and we did it over about 3 months' time, which is two meetings a month. So it was 6 sessions, and you know, carving the head, carving the body, and then attaching and painting. So we spent about two classes on each element of it: carving the head, carving the body, and then painting it. So uh, it was a fun class. I loved teaching it. I hope that it gave some folks some inspiration on carving wildfowl. And I I don't think I'm sure that Terry would have been very polite about his critique of my duck. So he he would if you ever get a chance to see some of his work, it's amazing. So especially the paint jobs that he does. I think one of the things I learned about doing wildfowl carving, and one of the reasons I don't do it as much as I used to, is because wildfowl carving is one about 1/4 carving, 1/4 texturing, and half painting. And and you can do a really wonderful carving job and a really wonderful texturing job, and really screw it up with a lousy paint job. So so you have to like to paint if you're a wildfowl carver. So
So looking at your kitty, it looks like a nice paint job. So you obviously translated some of that skill.
well, and the kitty was actually made back a long while back. I think probably 1983 or 1984, before I even thought of trying to carve birds or anything like that. Um, we had been carving boots, and I thought, well, what's a way that I can, make this? And I thought, well, Puss in Boots, and so I added a cat in the boot. So that was that one. There's a I carved 3 of these. One I gave to a relative. One I had when the California Carver Guild had a museum and gallery in San Simeon, and I had it in the gallery, and it was for sale. And I, back in the '80s, I an exorbitant price I thought was $75, and uh, it wasn't selling. It'd been in there for a couple of months, and I was like, okay, well, I guess nobody likes it. And friends of mine, Bob and Marcia Goss, were there at the time. They were the stand-in curators for the museum. And I said, well, I guess you have to drop the price on it because it's not selling. And Marcia told me, no, 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 double it, double the price, and it will sell. And so they put $150 on it. And about a week later, she gives me a call, your cat sold. And I'm like, really? And she goes, yes, this couple came in and they were kind of bickering at each other. And the lady, just when she came in and the cat was kind of near the door, and he says, I'll buy anything I want. I'll buy this. She grabs the cat. And so that was how my cat sold for $150.
There we
And
go. And were the eyes painted, it looks like, or is it glass?
yes, yeah, they're painted in and then covered with clear nail polish.
Yeah. And it's a one piece carving.
Correct.
Yeah.
Except for the shoelaces. I did drill holes and use a little brown heavy duty cord for shoelaces on it.
Nice. Nice. Any questions for Scott? Mr. says, this is particularly impressive, Scott.
Oh, thank
There we go. Okay. You can always put other questions later on. We don't have to limit them. Let's see. Here we go. Jerry, I forgot. So Jerry, and then after Jerry will be Tom Rich.
Okay, these two carvings basically were meant to fill the same hole. I've got this thing about carving and using window frames as frames for the carvings, and and if you look at the carving on the left, you'll see that there's a window in there. I've got a full size window that's same style and the same proportions, and the idea was to go and carve the one on the left, put it inside the center section of the window, and then do grapes up the outside. And as soon as I got to the point that this was done, I said, that just looks kind of weird. You got a window inside a window, and it just didn't work. So I put a frame around it and just called it a standalone piece. And I'm actually quite happy with it. The piece in the center is all wood burned, and that sits back probably about a half inch or so. I basically used some really thin basswood, wood burned it, and then created a box around that, and then glued it to the back of the larger carving. The one on the right was also supposed to go into that window. Um, my wife and I have been lucky enough that we've been able to travel to Europe a number of times recently. And although we spend a lot of time in the big cities, we really like some of the stuff that we've seen in some of the smaller villages and towns. And so I wanted to create some sort of a relief carving that would reflect some of the areas that we've been in. So I went back through all of my pictures from a couple of trips to Spain and Italy, and then got online and looked at some other pictures. And this was the design that I came up with. So I'm particularly pleased with it because it indeed is my own design. Um, it's out of basswood, and the darker wood, like the door, the areas above the windows, the window, um, the shutters, uh, those are all out of butternuts, as is the table down in the right hand corner. Um, the two bottles that you see on the table with the reflections, the reason that the light reflects off of them is because those truly are um, little turn bottles. I have a friend of mine down in Mesa at the wood shop, and he turned those for me, and then we'd set them in on the table, and it really gives it a rather interesting depth of field, because you look at it and the bottles stick out towards you and everything else is back, and it creates this sense of realism that I don't think I could have gotten without it.
And what about the hat on the left-hand side? Is that carved or is that a separate?
No, that's all one piece. So that, that was carved as part of it. The only parts uh, that weren't original on the left hand side, there's a couple of dowels that stick out to represent, how you would hang stuff. Um, but no, the hat, everything there, with the exception obviously of the window frame, which is also butternut, and the piece in the back. But the larger piece is all one.
And how are you finishing?
Um, it's basically I use mostly Minwax 209, which is a clear finish, and then I'll take that same 209 and I'll mix a little bit of burnt umber with it, and that's what I use to create the shadows. Pretty much just dry brush it on. Um, it's a technique that I think Jeff Harness taught me, and if you I don't like to paint, and I'm not a very good painter, but I like adding the texture that the 209 and the burnt umber will give you. Um, Same thing as the one on the right. You can see where the stone arch has got texture. I did the 209 to help enhance the valleys in between the tile roof shingles.
Okay. Let's see. The question was from, did Jerry teach a class on relief carving at the Salem show? The answer is no. Jerry was traveling and is in Mesa. Do you ever teach, Jerry?
The only thing I've ever actually taught, I did do about a 1 hour seminar at the show in Mesa on that technique of using the 209 and the burnt umber to create shading. And it's a way to go and bring some life to a carving. Normally with a relief carving, you rely on the light source. You don't always necessarily get the light source you want, but by adding shading to your carving, you can create sort of a light source even when you don't have one.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I do an awful lot of mentoring of other carvers, particularly down in Arizona, but I've never taught a formal class.
I'll put it.
I need to get a lot better.
So Jeff Osborne is the leader of the Newberg group, right over the hill, Jerry. And Jeff, I'll put a question in your, I assume that you wanted. Would Jerry be willing to visit the group on a Monday afternoon in Newberg and talk about your techniques, just kind of as a chat, would be my guess. No need for an answer, but that's
Sure.
kind of
Sure. Be happy to.
and that's your purposes.
Okay. Yeah. The Dolphins, an interesting story in the Dolphins. One of the fellows that I mentor down in Arizona was from Idaho. He started carving about 3 years ago. He got into carving because he wanted to play the violin, but he was left-handed, and he couldn't find the neck piece for a left-handed violin. So he brought me the right-handed neck piece and said, could you make a mirror image of this? So I did. It came out really nice. I was really quite pleased with it. And he said, well, how hard can carving be? If you can do that, I can do that. So he started carving. And the nice thing about the guy is that he always carved over his head, which I think is great because that's the way you learn. And I was mentoring him. I'd work with him down in Mesa. We would correspond back and forth during the summertime. Well, he started the Dolphins about a year and a half ago, and then died not unexpectedly, but rather suddenly. At that point, the Dolphins were just barely roughed out. I mean, you could kind of tell what he had in mind. And his widow asked me if I would complete them. So this is not something I would normally have done. So I said, yeah, I would be honored to do that. So I spent an awful lot of time on them. One of the things that Keith hadn't taken into account when he started carving them is the pectoral fins. He had just something sort of penciled on the side of it, sort of like, fin goes here. But no idea how he planned to do it. So that was quite a challenge. And but it came out well. I was really pleased with it. He picked a piece of basswood that it's hard to tell from the photo, but if you look at the carving from the front, even for basswood, it's got very strong grain, and it just sort of follows and flows right over the waves. It's just absolutely, it was a beautiful piece of serendipity. The widow was exceptionally pleased with it, so happy with it that she asked me to keep them. She thought that they just came out too nice for her to put on her table, and she thought that I should keep them, which I gratefully did. So I'm real pleased with them, and I think if Keith can see them, I think he'd be pleased too.
Great job. Okay, no question. I want to move on to Tom, and then after Tom will be Roman. Oops, I'm sorry, Tom.
Birds.
I got K on it. God, my mouse is not working very well, so why is coming? There we go. Sorry, Tom.
There we go. No, that's fine. When the guild became interested in comfort birds as a way to sell at Gathering of the Guilds and other shows as a way to make money to support the booth, I kind of like the bird, and I kind of like the tortoise or turtle. And so I've been doing those as much as I can. And I had 6 hopefully ready for Gathering of the Guilds, but didn't make it. So maybe for Multnomah Days. And I started about 3 years ago doing a lamination or gluing together of light wood and dark wood to make what looked like wings, or at least closely approximating wings. But they're made exactly like comfort birds are made out of a single block. You start with a 2x2x4 block, and you put the pattern, the top-down pattern on one side and the side view pattern on the other, and cut it out with a bandsaw. And you can see the the rough outs behind. You can see the rough outs, and then just work towards making the bird. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see I started with a very light wood. In this case, it's ash in the center, and so it's a 1 by 2 by 4, and then 2 pieces of 1/2 by 2 by 4. And in this case, it's walnut. And so I have ash and walnut, and just cut them to size and make them pretty close together. And then I glue them just the same way you would glue pieces for a box or something like that. And making sure that I have the center line marked all the way around. And then put the patterns on, again, being very, very careful about center lines. So you get the center line of the pattern with the center line of the wood, and that way the wings on each side are the same. They are the same distance from the center. So they will look on one side, it would look the same as on the other. So here I have on upper right 6 blocks, and then lower left. I finished one all the way just to see how it's going to look, and that's the one that you saw in the single photo. But you can see in the lower left, there's the bird finished, and then there's a couple of birds that, or 3 birds that are in process. And then I left some so that you can see how they're cut out. They're cut out with a bandsaw, just like the regular comfort birds. In the back, there's some turtles, and I do the same thing. You start with a 1 by 2 by 3, put the pattern on and cut it out, and then start carving. And at the end, there is a little bit of work with a V tool to make a pattern on the back. But and you also have to have a hook knife to kind of dig out the tummy a little bit, so that the tummy is where the thumb can rest, and it becomes like a worry rock or a worry stone. It's a comfort turtle with a kind of concave tummy. So they're both made for comfort, for stress relief, and I like to give them away when I'm not giving them to the guild to sell. I like to find people who would appreciate having a stress reliever, and just putting it in their hand and say, would you like to have it? So it's one of the things that I enjoy doing.
How is ash to carve compared to walnut?
They're both hard. Ash, of course, is the wood you make baseball bats out of. It's a hard wood. And actually in this, and in the turtles, I do carve with a knife. With the birds, I use drum sander of different grits and different sizes. In fact, I start with kind of a drum rasp that goes on a permanently held down drill that I can adjust the speed, and I can use 2 hands to hold the piece while I set up, while the drill is turning. And I'll use that kind of a barrel rasp at first to get most of the wood off the corners, and then I'll use sandpaper starting with 80 grit and going down to a 220 on the power machine, and then a hand sand 320, 400, and 600. I get down to 600, and if the shape is fine and so on, I will then on a cloth wheel with aluminum oxide, the white material that will pick up on the cloth wheel. I'll buff it with aluminum oxide, and then I have a second cloth wheel that I'll put carnauba wax, and they become really shiny and really smooth, just like a smooth rock, just like a worry stone would be.
It's Tom Scott asked a question about band throwing it out. After you make the first pass and cut one profile, how do you attach that back before you make the second pass?
Clear plastic tape, Scotch tape. I just, if I'll do the top down first, which is a fairly easy cut. It's kind of a curvy and so on. And then I'll just put those pieces that I cut off back and tape it around. It'll take 2 pieces of 2-inch wide tape, and then I turn it sideways and I do the side view. So it's all back together when I'm doing the side view. You do have to be careful that pieces don't fall off as you're doing the second side. But I think on the lower left picture, the bird that's on the furthest right shows kind of all the little pieces that I kind of separated them a little bit so you can see that it's already cut out, but inside there is a bird. And but you cut the top down, tape it together, you turn it sideways and do the sideways one, the side view.
Okay. Is the tape double-sided or single-sided?
Single-sided tape.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
just packing tape. So you
Okay,
can see
packing.
through it, it's clear, and you can still see your lines really well.
That's a good
And
idea.
my eyesight's not really great. And so I use magnifiers, and I make sure I stay way outside the line, because if you go inside the line, you're kind of messing up your bird. So there's probably more sanding and filing and that sort of stuff than somebody who is really tight on being able to follow the line doing bandsawing.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yep.
So Roman, you're up, and then there's no more questions that I see, and then after Roman will be Jim.
Hello,
Okay.
I like wood carving, whittling, chip carving, wood turning, and this I started 12 years ago, and I wanted to show a few strops that I made recently. I designed these chip carving projects, and you may see the knife that I used to carve those. I like chip carving knives from Lee Ferguson knives because it has a hollow grind, and the particular blade is very nice and good for chip carving. I designed these patterns to be functional. If you look closely, you will see there are some gaps between chips, so those chips don't touch each other. That means there is very few sharp ridges, and those here on that image, they are aligned along the grain, so it's good for beginners wood carvers because they no sharp ridges to break. And I really like carving functional items that I can use, and carving and decorating your own strop is a good exercise, but also when you make your custom strop, it becomes a conversational piece. So I would recommend people to decorate their strops. I shared.
What is readandtry.com?
So this is my personal website, readandtry.com, where I share my wood carving projects and patterns. And if you go there, you will find 3 chip carving patterns for making strops. Those are available for free. When you download, it's a PDF, and then you can transfer and carve.
Yeah. Here's slide 2.
And you can see I have 3 different designs, and the pattern that I share allows you to make a strop that is 8 inches long and 10 inches long, so you can pick and choose. If you decorate the side of this strop, you can make a strop to be a ruler. You see those ruler marks on the side of this drop. I usually put inches on one side and centimeters on the other. Yeah. And that is my first ever decorated strop that I carved 10 years ago. I use it almost every day, and you can see it's decorated with chip carving.
Yeah. And you had mentioned other forms that those Christmas tree patterns are your own unique design that has all
Yes,
different kinds of evolution for chip carving.
I designed that tree pattern in 2016, and nobody carved a tree like that before. And now I often see pictures of uh, that other chip carvers carve these little trees. I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah. And Roman's a member of our club as well as being president of his club, and a sponsor of us. So, and also a great resource for chip carving information. Thank you, Roman.
Next week, I will be teaching a chip carving class how to make strops in a local wood carving club, and I hope people will like that project. We'll see.
Ah,
Thank you.
great. Thanks. Jim, you're up next, and then Russ.
Okay, hello everybody. These are hearts that were inspired by something that my wife and I saw a couple years ago in Chester, Vermont, the place that we went for our one-night honeymoon after eloping in Amherst, Massachusetts, as college students 54 years ago, and I saw on this chainsaw carver office, it was closed, but his work was all around, and he had these half hearts, the one you see in the background, a little bit larger than that, on a fence, basically for vivid red, for sale for $75. And I was rather bored with making comfort birds, and so I figured I would start making hearts. And some of these are made from the same pattern. I just did a pattern of a heart or whatever, and enlarged it, so on. But frankly, I like the ones that are more free drawn. I like the shape better. And note the bases of them, which are just natural wood, a few little details on them. The one on the left is driftwood, and I think has a piece of plum over there. And I don't know what the species of wood is with the really rough bark on the three to the left. To get them red, I use a bright red trans tint, and you mix it with shellac, unwaxed shellac, and you mix it at a higher than more drops of the red in there than you're supposed to in the directions say. If you use a lighter wood like a pine, that like I saw up in Maine, you get the really vivid reds. If you're using a darker wood, like a walnut or whatever, you're getting what's mostly in these pictures right here. And I like using this is a great use of cutoffs, just from other work, other furniture projects you do. Just eventually cut them up into smaller pieces and make a heart. And people just love these. And the ones that are flat on the back, like the lower red one that's just standing up there, we've engraved things like my book club. We had all of the members of the book club showing appreciation for the woman who was our host for many years. And then on the yes,
Jim, are you carving? Are you power carving, hand carving, sanding?
that's all hand carving, and of course roughing things out with a bandsaw, and then carving. And you're trying to get the sides very smooth and gradual. The wood is kind of thick; it's about 1.5 inches thick on the whole, and then eventually you're doing a lot of work on the sanding machine. And then on the right there, you're seeing basically a Pacific Northwest native ladle in the Pacific Northwest indigenous species style, and that was from an Adam McIsaac course that I took a few years ago. These are two pieces of yard art, basically. The one there where It says this moment. It's engraved. The letters are cut in all sides. It's never this moment, never, 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 never again. And it's based on a poem by a poet named Kathleen Rainey. And I think that the name of the poem is This Moment, but I'm not sure. And I just saw that poem somewhere, and I had this piece of wood, so I figured I would just carve it and mount it near our little free library. The one on the right is based on uh, Leroy Setsiel, the father of Northwest wood carving. He had a retrospective. He passed away in about 2008 or so, but there was a retrospective of his work done by the University of Oregon, and then a big display at the Portland Art Museum. And I had this big piece of wood that was being tossed out in a construction area, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I figured, hey, well, I'm going to do something based on what he did. And so that's in our backyard in the sitting area. And this is a deep relief in Claro walnut of a tree, and it's probably one of the. I've only been carving for about 7 or 8 years, and frankly, I haven't done as much as I like to in the last couple of years. But this is a deep relief of a tree, and so it's very deep. It was difficult to get into some of those nooks and crannies, but I enjoyed the piece of wood, and I enjoyed making the slope and so on, and it just in light, the shadows are very nice.
I'm going to go back to your other one, Jim.
And this is I took a Monica Setsiel course, and Monica Setsiel is probably over 80 years old, and she is the daughter of Leroy Setsiel, and she taught this course at Kelly Sadelman's shop, who's a master carver that's since retired near us, and so basically everybody was creating their own designs, and it's of course your own grid patterns and so on, and I just did a bunch of interesting, weird shapes. There's no significance to it, but it was fun doing it. So I've got this on a wall with a number of other pieces of art. And there's another Adam McIsaac course, a piece that I did up in his shop in La Centralia, up in Washington, and of course it's a salmon based on the Pacific Northwest native tribal work. And then on the right side is an odd shaped bowl, and I guess the really odd part about that, which you really can't see, is the base of it, which was actually a number of chamfers done on a table saw, feeding the bowl in there at an angle to the blade, of course, with the proper fences and so it wouldn't go away, and slowly increasing the height of the blade to get this groove, all 3 grooves all around the base of it. But regrettably, you can't see it here.
And hand carved the inside?
Hand carved the inside, yes.
Yeah.
This is a stylized seascape, which I really liked, and it's based on something I saw on the coast. And I just, on this one, of course, you're doing some work with the router for the deep relief in the background, the upper part above the waves. And you can see after doing that router work, you really can't see it really, but in the waves in the middle are a number of silver things there where there was an oopsie because there were buried nails in there in this piece of scrap Claro walnut. And the router cut them clean, and it didn't wreck the blade of the router. So I was pleased with that. But I just like the flowing of that piece, and it's on a wall.
And you love Claro walnut?
Claro walnut, which is a species of walnut from the Northern California, Southern Oregon coast, well, more toward the mountains, but it's distinctive from regular normal walnuts in that it has the reddish and the different shades of brown in there. It's not quite so uniform.
And you buy it locally at Gobi?
At Gobi, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Jim, I don't see any questions, but if they come up, I'll let you know.
Yep.
Russ, you'll be on, and then George Blackman had a conflict tonight, so we'll have a video after Russ, and then after that, Doug, you'll be up. So go ahead, Russ.
Well, I fish with a fellow that is a big fan of the Grinch. And so I had to make him a little ornament. And it really happened that Sarah Barraclaw had just joined CCA and put her pattern up and showed how to do it. So I've carved a couple of these. One of them, the one on the left, is going to a 5, 6 year old, my adopted granddaughter that lives in Buffalo. Anyway, family. And of course, the one on the right, because it looks more Grinchier, is going to go to my fishing partner. But what I don't, hey, I wonder if other people in the family want to have something like this. So I passed it around, and the result was I want the Grinch after he gets a heart. So that upper button that you see up there has changed into a heart and will be painted gold. And then the face, of course, will be, if you'll show the next slide, much more pleasant and happier. And the eyes will be more of a cartoon eye. And anyway, so that gives you an idea. And this is the pattern that Sarah Barraclaw offers. So the ball on the hat has to stick out away from the background so it isn't flat. You can use what I had carved was a 3/4 inch, and this next one I'm going to do is half. And the biggest problem with this thing is getting where the arms crossed and the little white cuffs and all that other stuff. And, when you cross your arms, they aren't all the same plane. And it's kind of interesting to learn that. I do goof around painting carving. I'm not an artist by any means, and I copy other people's stuff, use that for the inspiration. But as you can see, this is a 6x4, 1/2 inch thick, 3/4 inch thick. It's freestanding if you want it to be. It's fun. Next slide. This is a pattern that was a rough out that I got from Terry Moss, one of our local CCA members down in Turner, Oregon. And the pattern, it's got the head tilted a little bit to the side. And the model that he showed was the guy's his right hand was sitting on a dolphin, a set of piling with some rope around it and stuff like that. And gee, gosh, oh golly, gee, isn't that fun? And there was 6 or 7 of us in his class. I wonder what else you could do with it. So one guy carved a fella in a suit holding an umbrella upside down. Someone else did a fella that was in his sweats walking a dog. And as you can see, I'm working on getting this fisherman that's going to be holding a fishing rod in his left hand. Hey, he's caught a pretty nice fish there. So that's where we're going with it. And it's obviously a work in progress. You can see on his left leg that there's a mark. And there's one on the right leg about this. He's wearing rubber boots, of course, and, pants and all the other good stuff. So it's a work in progress. I'm having fun. I'm learning how to do faces a lot better. I've been at this since 2000, summer of 2003. I decided that I would like to carve some, the little guys that live in the woods with a red hat, and the name just went away. Anyway, uh, so I just grabbed a piece of local wood, and I'm sorry,
Gnomes?
gnomes. Yes, thank you for the help there.
Okay.
So I decided I'd carve some of that, and I went out and I picked up some brush and started carving on it. And that's when I learned what Tom explained a little bit earlier, that if you're carving Oregon ash, you're carving concrete. I mean, that stuff is really tough. And I didn't have the world's greatest knife. I had a flex cut, but it was better than some that you could get. And since then, I'm learning a little better. The bear and the fella, the Santa Claus, that is the European Santa Claus. I have my son-in-law is from Australia, and he's not a big fan of the Coca-Cola Santa Claus that we all most of us came to know as kids. So I carved that one for him, and I'm now working on another one that's sort of similar. And of course, Terry Moss taught us, gave us a class on how to do bottle stoppers. I haven't put the cork on yet. And of course, I'm not exactly the most pleasant person on Christmas morning when the kids and the grandkids are the one that got you up. So that's me in with my cup of coffee, and I'm trying to think, what am I going to use for newspaper? And if you look at that carving carefully, it is the Boise Times, and you could read the title to it. And my aunt, who's in the veterans care home, she doesn't have much room, but she kind of likes gnomes, and purple was her favorite color, so that's where that gnome came from. Next. So there's a fella in Korea, DDALO is his moniker that he goes by, and ever so often, about every 2 weeks, he shows a different thing to carve. And of course, you can't carve one, you have to carve one for your household. And then each of the grandkids get one. And I think you all know where the story is going here. And the guy I fish with turns wood. So he turned a bunch of eggs for me. And we had an Easter egg hunt here at the house here. And there's the results.
Are the bases turned with the egg, or is this separate?
It's all one piece. One
Oh.
piece of wood, just different coloring from the paint. I use acrylic paint right now, but I used to do oil painting. And one of the things my mom discovered was that the oil painters on TV die in their 60s. And she attributed it to them handling all the nasty, obnoxious things to clean oil out of your paint brushes. And so she went to water-based. They've developed a water-based oil paint that you can clean your brushes with just plain old water. And you can thin your paint with that. So I'm going to work towards using that more. What you have here is on the right side is some cousins. You got Yeti and Sasquatch. They're distantly related, obviously. And on the left is some coasters that I got the inspiration to do at last year's Rendezvous. I took the pyrography course and started messing around with watercolor pencils. And I didn't realize how you were supposed to use them. So, and the one of the instructors that was mentioned a little earlier tonight was watching me, and I was coloring the wood with the pencil, and then getting a little bit of paint and a Q-tip and pushing the paint to the pyrography lines. And she's just amazed. I've never seen anybody do that before. And I'm thinking, I didn't know there's any other way to do it. So that's where we've gone with that. And I don't know, the cousins were started with Santa Claus roughouts, the Coca-Cola Santa Claus roughouts. Here again, Terry Moss, I took a class from him and stumbled into those, been having fun with them. But they were easy to convert from Santa Clauses with a cap, with a tasseled cap and beard and all the fur and all that stuff. And I guess maybe you could say that underlying all of that is these guys.
I thought you were going to say the left-hand one was you on Christmas morning, baring your teeth.
I feel that way sometimes.
Okay. George had 3 meetings tonight, and he had to go to one of the other ones. So George is quite a remarkable guy. He's currently considers himself a blacksmith, but he is really a talented carver. Lives in Redmond. Used to live in Portland. Grew up in the vicinity of Leroy Setzel when he was a young man, and had an opportunity to work with him and learn from him. George was on a Zoom call on Monday, and we ran through his pictures that he recorded. So I'm going to play the video.
I guess that's almost 3 feet long. that was inspired on a trip to Alaska. They had a mounted king salmon, really king salmon, 98 pounds. And this is the proportions of, I took pictures of that mounted piece and then did a teak carving of that one. Sometimes I buy wood, but there's this koa wood you get from Hawaii, but you can't buy it as lumber. It's against the law to export it. But I was given a broken table, and it had two big slabs of koa. And this is one thing I've made out of the table. And it went back to friends in Hawaii. So this is about 18 inches long. I put a new sink in the bathroom, and I glued up a bunch of teak, and I had a oval hammered copper sink. But the copper sink was too small for the existing hole in the countertop. So I glued up 2-inch thick teak, and this is not added to, but this is totally carved out of one piece of teak that went around the sink. I love making serving trays. Again, I love teak, and that's got a joint down the middle, but you have to really, really look at it, look for it to find it. And that's about 16 inches long.
That's walnut again, all hand carved.
Oh yeah, I don't do any scraping or sanding. Yeah, this is a jewelry box for my daughter, and it's got on the far corner is a single bronze rod, and the drawers swing out, and then I had carvings on the top. 2-foot length of an oak log, and I've got lots of different views on this. But this has all surfaces are carved again, no sanding or anything. Under his feet is a rabbit. Usually an owl shows a round eye. He's got a attitude in his eye that says, "Don't even think about touching my rabbit." And I have about a 3-foot square cold air return duck that always irritated me because it just gathered dust up there all the time. And I love Northwest Coast Indian stuff. And so this is a takeoff on one of their basic beliefs that the raven brought the sun and moon. And evidently they walked around bumping into each other before that. But this one has the sunburst to cover up that big hole in the wall. And that's a full-size mask that they would wear in celebrations and dances and stuff. 4 layers of finished boards, and it's about 4 times 3/4, so 3.5 or so. And then you can see all the layers inside to get different build-up thickness. And this is only like 2-3 pounds. It's just really lightweight. And then this is all gouge carved. And since it's the same board, the grain fits. You have to look really hard to find where the layers are.
And that last little video clip didn't do justice to that description. It's basically a bandsaw box, dramatically enlarged, then turned over. So he was cutting the single flat board at a 45-degree angle on a bandsaw in order to then layer those things back up in order to get the depth and then the hollowness underneath. George really has a lot of remarkable skills and makes knives and gouges out of wonderful steel that he repurposes sometimes. Doug, go ahead, you get queued up. We had a carving sig meeting last week, and one of the members of the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers had access to a big chunk of cherry. You'll see her later on in a video clip, and had an injury using an angle grinder and a pretty aggressive blade on it. So she was looking for alternative tools, which tended to focus on now on ArborTech variation that Doug had a lot of experience with. So Doug did a mentoring session for her in the evening, but he also did a demonstration in the daytime one. So these were, Doug, you can talk about these particular attachments in a bit, but I'll play the video. I turned the audio off on the videos because there's a lot of noise in the background. And so it doesn't, it's maybe 2 minutes long. You get to see 3 different clips, part of that same session. And that's the spheral plane. That creates a ball, or a convex or concave. So this is being applied now to the inside. This is a different attachment, a flat plane blade. So Doug, you like the jaw horse, do you?
Yes, I do.
What do you like about it?
I like how quick it is. You can clamp super wide stuff. You can also get an adapter to make even clamp wider stuff, like a sheet of plywood, I think 4 feet. So it's super quick for clamping in. You can clamp round stuff.
So irregular shapes as well, right?
You could raise it up and then just bring it up and drop that down. Step down a little bit. You could put a lot of force on it and break whatever you're putting in there too. But it grips pretty good. It has rubber in here.
Yeah.
So
How do you release the brake?
you just push up on this handle here and then push back down on the foot pedal.
Okay.
Chainsaw carpenters use them all the time.
Okay, Doug, that was a quick set of videos. You want to talk a bit about your experience with the ArborTech and maybe some of the other attachments that you might have talked about?
Yes, I can do that. I'm gonna get my camera on.
Yeah. Okay. I won't be able. You won't be live on your camera.
Okay.
So I'm just going to stay right here, otherwise I get screwed up.
Okay. Yeah, it's just like the spheral plane can do balls like of probably like from maybe 4 inches up to like as big as you want. So, and then the turbo plane has you can do like leveling with that, like flat leveling of boards with attachments on there, and also like you can use it to do like insides of bowls too, like forming shallow bowls with that. So, and then there's also like the mini carver, which has like a smaller blade for carving. Like it can reach in areas and do carvings.
Which versions do you tend to use more than not?
I've been using the spiral plane because I got it for making spheres. So, because I thought that was so interesting to be able to actually be able to do that with a power carving tool. So,
Yeah. And so Melissa was hollowing out the inside of that big cherry bowl. What was the conclusion that she came to about which attachment she would probably go with?
I believe she really liked the mini carver because that can get down in there for carving out the bowl, but it won't be as accurate if you're using the spheral plane for doing inside a bowl. The only thing with the spheral plane, it can only do like kind of bigger bowls though. So, and they have to be they're kind of shallow. They are kind of shallow too. But it'll also do the outside of the bowl too.
Yeah. So you had several balls that you had at the Carving Sig meeting, the balls that you made. Are you doing concave stuff as well with this?
Oh
spheral
yeah,
plane?
yeah. You can take like you can get like a big tree root or something, and then you could actually like make like a bowl shape in a tree root where it looks really like it's been machined, but then it but then it'll still look like a tree root too. So you've tried to think about how was that made, but you can use the spiral plane to do that. There's a video on YouTube of one of the creators of doing that with a big root.
Okay, if you have any questions for Doug, put them in the chat. Both Doug and Terry Burnside were great resources to help Melissa figure out how to move beyond her hand injury that she got from using a aggressive attachment on an angle grinder. Ray, I didn't give you a heads up, but you're next, Ray, with yours. I'll do John Niebergold. I don't think is here. I'll check to see if he wasn't here earlier. I'll go through his slides and then Tom's site. That'll be yours. Ray.
Okay. So tonight I'm just showing something that I'm currently working on. Scott Lang inspired me a while back. I decided I needed to try and do a wood chain. And so never having done that, I first went to YouTube. And that was not much help because everything I found there was how to do it with power tools. And what I wanted to do was carve it. So not having a good idea and I couldn't find any good information on how to lay it out. So I went ahead and made squares. And I was in a hurry, so the layout wasn't very good. And in my short journey of chain making so far, I've learned several things. One is that the layout is really important. It makes your life a whole lot simpler. There's the knife that's shown there is one of Scott Lang's knives. He's a master whittler and graciously showed how to make this knife in our guild YouTube. You just go to our guild website and click on the March 14th, 2023 video, Make a Knife. And there's an outstanding link that's associated to that. It'll give you all the information, PDF format for all of the information and how to get that accomplished. It's a really, really good one. And so the knife, that's a 2-inch blade on there. And so that makes a huge difference in the thinness and in both directions. It's not very thick. It's only the width of a jigsaw blade, and it's in both directions. And so it comes out really nice and makes it a lot easier to do chain carving, particularly the insides of the links. Then I got around to the point where I had to separate links. And Larry noticed as I was sitting here, I have a tendency to carve while I'm on Zoom meetings and doing things like podcasts and stuff like that. That's when I do a lot of my carving. And so he noticed that I was struggling with a coping saw, and he showed me a picture very similar to the mini saw down there. And so I went ahead and made one. And then if you want instructions for making your own, I think they'll be published in the next guild letter. If you want something before then, you can just drop me an email and I'll send you a little thing. The other thing that I learned from Scott after I got started was Scott mentioned that the ratio for the length should be the ratio for the links should be the length equals 1.5 times the width, so that you can then go ahead and make something that really resembles a chain rather than a block of squares. And so that worked out really well. And then the other thing that I've noted is that whittling and carving can be a lonely pastime if you don't get other people involved in it. And so you can learn a lot of people, and everybody I've met in my short journey of carving is that I have found everybody's more than eager and willing to share whatever they know. And so I really appreciate that.
Great, thank you, Ray. Jeff Osborne, I'm going to go through the slides that John Niebergall collected, and he had sent some notes about attributing different projects to different people. So if you see errors or want to comment on that, feel free to do that. John is a member, lives in Sherwood. He's a member. He's a member of the Newberg group that Jeff organized and leads. This was a cat. I don't know Dana's last name. He said Dana carved the cat. She found the pattern on YouTube called the most insanely easy cat carving ever. And if you Google that term, you'll see it. I think it's pretty charming. It's charming. And there's no eyes. You don't have to worry about carving eyes on that. So, but it's still a cat. It's not an elephant. So I thought that was cute. Chef Swanson carved really gorgeous birds. Spalted maple and burls, and then the one on the upper right is still attached. John said that he might have done that one. He said he finished it, but he hasn't cut it apart yet. But he thought he would finish it together and then cut it so he don't have to finish the tip of the tail. But he got to that point. But he pointed out that he uses this birchwood gunstock oil finish that he buys at Bi-Mart. And he used that. I think he said Dana also used it on the cats, as I recall.
Larry,
Yeah, Jeff.
I'd just like to make a correction. So the birds are by Ron Swenson.
Ron Swenson, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And John pointed out there's apparently a wax that comes with this birchwood. He said don't use the wax. He just uses the oil, the gunstock finish. When I first met John, he had this project that he had brought in some roughouts for. It came from a UK magazine called Wood Carving, and Wood Carving is an elegant old journal that's just got great designs. So the axe that he carved is on the left. It's kind of an upper view. It doesn't quite, you have to kind of get your perspective in mind, but the picture from the article is obvious. So he had that, and Jeff, he had that at the Newberg group. I'm not sure if anybody has carved that, but I thought it was a great whittling project from the beginning.
Yeah, actually what he did was, he's a great guy. He made roughouts for everybody in the group. And so he taught us all how to make these little axes, and he provided the wood, anyway, just want to give a shout out to him.
Dana asked if anybody else lost sound. I didn't lose sound, so if anybody else, Doug said no. Not sure what's going on, Dana. We have this article that John wrote to England. I got a copy from an old version of that. I assume this chain was his, roughed out and then finished with a kind of a round edge thing. It seems like link chains are rites of passage, like dovetails are for box makers. I'm not sure. He had these in there. Jeff, were these his projects or somebody else? Do you remember?
That's somebody else's project, but I am not sure who it is.
Okay. So the pictures were provided. So this is the otter, a variation of the otter. I guess it's an otter. Same pattern, but painted. So it's a different take on it. And the hawk eagle, he had his name on it. Do you know what the background of that is, Jeff?
I don't. I know that a couple of them are working on this type of pattern, him and Ron, but I don't know whose this is.
Personally, I particularly like that pattern. It seems like a
Yeah.
very elegant, stylized, symbolic pattern. It just really seems good. Tom Stipe, you're going to be up. I think this might be the last slide. Yeah, Tom, you're up.
Okay, I'll unmute. That is a piece of scrap wood. It's kind of a high relief. It's probably about a quarter of an inch. It's a Celtic design from one of the magazines, or one of the Laura, I've forgotten her last name, but basically she does all these Celtic designs. That was my first.
Laura Irish?
Irish, yes. Thank you. That was my first experience with using the watercolor pencils. And I thought it would be interesting to have sort of a Celtic thing, maybe Irish perhaps, of orange and green and intertwined. And so that's meant to be symbolic of Ireland. For those not familiar, orange is the Northern Irish. Various spoons from various times. I started doing spoons back when I was still in Texas, and had some trees that came down, and they were Bodark, which is called Osage orange. On the left side there, the three spoons that are the smaller ones are made from the Bodark, Osage orange, and they were very easy to carve. Green, they next to impossible to carve when they're fully cured, and they're quite resonant. And I don't remember how I got the larger spoon. It was probably from some random tree that fell down. The middle spoon is from the last rendezvous. We were at the Capital Carvers had, and I managed to. That was my second attempt with painting with the watercolor pencils, and they actually turned out fairly well. And the last on the extreme right is a set of usually a set of spoon and fork. Usually forks, I'm told, are the result of carving a spoon too thin and rescuing it as a fork. In this case, actually, I did it on purpose. I thought and they're sort of free form, and they're madrone is the wood. And I carved this, started it in Ellensburg last summer, and finished it at home. Comfort critters. I carve comfort birds a bit differently than most people do. The one on the left is yellow cedar, and that's a walnut, looks like a walnut seal on the right. The screen thinks it's a little bit in front of it. I believe that's a seal, yeah, that's in walnut. I have carved probably about 200 comfort critters and give most of them to the local cancer treatment center, and they're quite popular there. I wound up having to make about a dozen or more per month. More comfort critters, walnut with a brass eye. I've since given up brass eyes and gone with just a white oak eye. Those are the only ones that do eyes, and that's a butternut slug on the right. And these are all hand-sized, anywhere from 3 to 4 inches, and a walnut turtle. And that also, as Tom Rich said, it has an indentation on the back, so that you can use it as sort of a worry stone.
And what Tom's not going to say is he's got great depth in computer numerical control and CNC. So he's using CNC to crank out a bunch of blanks of these turtles because he makes so many of them. Is that right, Tom?
That's correct. I'm a great believer. Well, you have to think about what the philosophy of being hand carved is. If you want to really be fanatic about it, you have to start by making your own stone axe. But if you are, I'm a few steps away from that. And so I use a CNC to do a rough out, and it is a very rough out. And then I do a hand carving for the rest. I find that to be the boring parts I get rid of.
Some lumberjack uses a chainsaw somewhere. Right?
And there's a variation on the otter, and it's in walnut. This was a class that was given at the in Vancouver, Washington, and Larry, you remember
Dick Wilkes.
Dick Wilkes, yes, thank you. That is probably about 14 inches high, hollowed in the back, and I got probably a fourth of that done at the class, a week-long class, and then this is alder. Alder is easy to carve as well, as long as it's wet. And this one was, but now it's, of course, very hard. I was going to paint it, but my wife said no. So it's not painted.
Gorgeous. Jeff, you're up next, too. Oh, no, you're not yet, but you will be up next.
Okay. A couple of relief painting reliefs. I think I may have done that. The one on the left was actually some actual paint. One of the few times I did painting. That's about 6 inches tall. And on the right is a cat with an attitude. It's sort of taken after the Chat Noir, from the poster from the 1880s, I think, in Paris. And I just thought that cat had a great attitude, so I did that. It is all wood burned. Relief goes, the highest part to the lowest part is probably about a half an inch. So it's a fairly significant relief. And this was the first class that I took from Larry. We did a relief carving in cherry. And of course, I went deep on that. I like to do the deep relief stuff. It originally was pretty light, sort of like what I was on the left, and now it is kind of mellowed out to that what you see on the right. It's about 14 inches high and probably 10 inches wide.
This is the Max Sutter design that he taught for 50 years when he was a founder of the club in 1973 and taught lots and lots of classes. This was one of 10 projects that he did in his beginning class, and I picked up a few of those during COVID, and we were doing some of those online.
Yeah, that was it. Very good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Tom, sorry, Jeff. Jeff, you're next.
Well, thanks. So a little bit about me and the Newberg Group, which officially our title is the Chehalem Valley Wood Carvers, but we're all new or fairly new. The most experienced ones are John, that you heard about earlier, and Ron Swenson, who pumps out some great stuff. We started the group because, I talked to Larry and I said, gosh, I want to learn some stuff about carving. And he said, well, let's start a group. So he came out, taught some lessons, and we've got a group of about 8 people that come every week. And there's about 12 of us all together. So that's a little bit about the group. And by the way, if you have, if you're interested in helping us out, teaching us some stuff, we're more than happy to have you either on a video or come out and join us, or we also do field trips, and we go out and learn from other carvers in their group, which we've done a few times down in Kaiser, and I don't remember the name of the group. We just call them the Kaiser group. And then Jack Giles, we go down there. We've gone down there a couple of times, and he's helped us with things like the birds and stuff. So having said that, if you would like to help us out or invite us over, please get a hold of me and we'll make that happen. What you're seeing on this particular slide, excuse me, I did not start this owl. This owl was started by someone who passed away, and unfortunately, Larry, I don't remember who it was. They did the eyes and the beak, and so I picked up the project and thought, well, I want to learn how to do birds, and so I started doing this particular bird, and just kind of either by the following my nose or asking questions of experienced wood carvers to help me out along the way. And so this is where almost I'm a little farther with it now, but this is where I've gotten to. I did all the burning, I did all of the feathers and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at. And again, my first bird project, don't know what I'm doing, to tell you the truth, but so far it's working out for me as long as I pay attention to people who tell me stuff.
And let me just comment on that, Jeff. We have boxes and boxes of rough outs, partially done carvings, things that have been left over from various estates. Some of those will end up in the swap meet, but they're great resources and can save you a lot of work from getting started. Sometimes people learn bird carving by carving a feather and going from there. But in this case, I think Jeff is a great idea to get started further along. So you get to experience enough of the project so you can decide whether you want to do your own from scratch or not.
Yeah, and just looking at it, I learned a lot about shapes and perspectives just because I had somebody who had gone before me and started the project, and I took it from there.
Yeah, and just to point out, Jeff is on the board of directors as a secretary for the club. He is the leader of the Newberg group, and he's also the book librarian for us. So Jeff has got access to all the information and been doing massive amount of work to index, title, label, and get the library in place so we can move it into the hands of the members. So we don't have one big lump sitting in my front yard. In the next project, Jeff is a different kind.
Yeah. So this was actually, again, it just happened to be this way. Ron Swenson started this project. He had an oak knob from as top of a poster bed, and so he thought, well, I'll do a little tree in there, but he was using hand tools, and he said it was just too tough. So he gave it to me, and I thought, oh, okay, let's see what I can do with it. So I got my power carver out. So this is my first power carving project. So there's a lot of firsts here. And you'll notice that I started painting it. There's a lot to go yet. And I have to tell you, I did a painting. The first carving I did was a flower for Jack Giles down in Albany. I spent months on it, and then I tried to paint it, and it just it was awful. So this is my second try at trying to put paint to a carving, and I hope I can get it right this time. But it's been a neat little project. Again, I learned a lot about power carving, which I didn't know before. So,
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We got about 5 minutes to go, and I'm going to zip through some slides from the Mesa and the Gathering of the Guilds that did not show up in the newsletter. This magnetic carving and it was interesting to me. I'll show you a little video of it. It's basically things that move, dynamism that you don't otherwise see. Automata, which are little hand cranked, maybe motorized kind of things, create motion. This guy, Larry Walterstorff, had a wood carving illustrated article, and then he was at the show and was able to show this thing. There's a little video here that I will start. I turned the audio off. You can just kind of see the motion. There's obviously magnets in the ball and opposing magnets in the base. And the article shows kind of the configuration of multiple exotic magnets to do that. This is another variation of creating movement. And the one behind it isn't quite pictured so well, but you'll see it come into focus right there. It's kind of an eggy kind of a thing, and it's got its own dynamism going on. And I don't know that I captured all the ones that he had. I had limited time, but I was able to shoot that video, and he was very willing to share that information. Carvings that move, and I'd love to do a program on automata. These are slides from the Mesa show. Caricature carving, there's a jar full of pickles. You can see each pickle's got a different face on it. And it was just like, okay, someone got addicted. I'm pretty sure the spoon in the middle was right out of the Beavercraft project. Beavercraft sells this spoon, the pattern design, and a piece of wood and a knife for, I don't know, $30, $35. It was at the Oakhurst rendezvous a year and a half ago. I started it and I found it to be pretty challenging. I was really impressed by the emotion that came out of that the female figure. I assume it's a female figure on the right hand side. Last month we did a Movies That Matter. There was a segment there on carving portraits from photos, and right there in the show was 3 different examples. You can see the photo at the bottom. They're not all together the same likeness. They're not bad. The biography on the upper left I thought was just stunning. I mean, the shading they got and the mirror image I thought was just really stunning. And there's a number of these repurposed golf club drivers that get the shank gets cut off and a head gets matched to it. And this I thought was a particularly nice example of that. Doing a flower like this is pretty hard. I've got one of our members is coming over and has been for almost a year carving petals and with power. It's a pretty challenging project, but to do that level of detail was really stunning to me. And then do the hummingbird in addition, mounted as it is, I thought the composition was remarkable. And then I'll call it a turtle. I don't know if it's a turtle or a tortoise or what kind of a amphibious kind of a thing it is, but I thought it was really, really well done. Caught nice painting. The Gathering of the Guilds was just a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and it was really a great show. We had a lot of stuff there. Kelly Stadelman sold a lot of her stuff, and she is just remarkable carver in every dimension, remarkable human being. I was particularly struck by this version of Santa and the composition of it. It looks to me like she made a box, and every panel on the 4 sides of the box was a relief carving and then painted. So it's not just a flat paint job. The back panel was yet one more sides of that, and then she probably carved the spring-loaded Santa Claus and then attached it to the box. But when she taught painting, a one-day painting class for us, she pointed out that for every color you pick, you choose four grades of shading with it in order to get the coloration. And the projects that she did was just really amazing. This is another one that she did. The backside of it was painted as a culinary engineer. It's obviously a chef picture. Nancy Mills is on the right. I really want to give Nancy credit. She worked her head off at being the full-time treasurer and full-time cashier for the Gathering of the Guilds, but she also carved these spool and other ornament kind of Santas. And last year she was in the show and she sold some. This year she sold a ton. For some reason, people were interested in buying these $20 ornaments. And she had a little stand, the green rod plus some arms out there. So within a very small retail space, she had a lot of density. And I thought it was a great way to display it. And she did well. Kelly sold most, and then Nancy sold the second most, dollar-wise. And that is the end of the show. That is the end of the slides for tonight.